Daniel Hayes thought he had found the woman of his dreams, but Naree Somchai wasn't waiting for love. She was building a web of lies that trapped 6 men at the same time. Daniel Hayes sat near the airplane window, watching the soft lights of the runway blur beneath the night sky as the plane took off. It was his 8th trip to Thailand in just 2 years. Every flight had carried with it a new hope, a renewed promise, and a belief that this time would be different. He had memorized every corner of the Bangkok airport, every street that led to Naree Somchai's apartment, and every expression she wore when she saw him after months apart. For him, this wasn't just a trip. It was a commitment, a devotion that had become his entire world. Daniel was 34, quiet, disciplined, and perhaps a little too trusting. He worked as a software engineer, earning a comfortable salary, but rarely spent it on himself. His friends often joked about his simple lifestyle. When he met Naree online, everything shifted. She had an effortless charm, warm eyes, a soft smile, and a way of making every message sound like a promise of forever. Their video calls stretched late into the night. Her laugh echoed in his empty apartment, making it feel less lonely. Slowly, she became the center of his plans, his savings, and his dreams. From the beginning, Daniel believed their love was real. Naree often spoke of a simple house away from the chaos of the city, a quiet life where they'd grow old together. She told him about her struggles, her family's modest background, and her desire to build a future with someone kind and loyal. He saw himself in that future without hesitation. It wasn't just her words, but the way she said them. Calm, soft, and so believable. Every visit felt like a small piece of that dream coming true. She welcomed him at the airport with flowers in her hands, just like in the romantic movies he had grown up watching. She cooked his favorite meals, walked with him through crowded night markets, and whispered how much she missed him when he was gone. Daniel never noticed the careful timing of her affection. He never saw how her eyes sometimes wandered when he spoke about their future. To him, love was simple. You give everything and you trust. He spent more than he ever planned. New phones, expensive jewelry, monthly transfers to help her with family expenses, and endless small surprises that made her smile. He justified it all as a part of building their life together. His friends, however, had stopped teasing and started warning him. They noticed what he didn't, the imbalance, the way he gave while she only promised. But Daniel silenced every doubt with the same excuse. She's different, she loves me. As the plane touched down in Bangkok, a familiar excitement ran through him. He imagined her waiting outside with the same bright smile, the same soft hug, and the same words that made him forget every warning. He had no idea that his love story was a carefully crafted performance, and that behind the gentle smile he adored, there lived a woman with more secrets than he could ever imagine. Naree Somchai, I lived a life so carefully built that no one ever saw the cracks. To Daniel, she was the perfect woman. Sweet, humble, endlessly loyal. But to others, she was someone else entirely. She knew how to adjust her tone, how to speak in ways that made each man feel special, as if they were the center of her universe. It wasn't luck, it was precision, a game she had mastered over time. Every promise, every laugh, every tear was calculated. Whenever Daniel arrived in Thailand, she made sure his world revolved only around her. She wore the necklace he had bought her on his second trip, the one he believed had a meaning deeper than words. She greeted him like she had been counting the days, and she always found the perfect excuse for why they couldn't marry yet. Visa issues, family complications, sudden medical emergencies. She never repeated the same story twice. She knew that believable lies needed variety, and Daniel, blinded by affection, accepted every word. But Daniel wasn't alone. In the same city, sometimes even in the same week, Naree welcomed other men with the same warmth. Rafael Ortiz, a businessman from Spain, believed he was financing her dream of opening a cafe. Victor Green from Canada thought he was helping her family out of debt. Arun Sharma from India saw her as a woman who needed rescue from a difficult life. Samuel Lewis, an older man from the U.S., believed he was her only protector. Kenji Sato from Japan thought their wedding was just months away. Each man saw a different version of her. With Rafael, she wore elegant dresses and spoke about business ventures. With Victor, she acted innocent and shy. With Arun, she showed a struggling but hopeful side. With Samuel, she spoke like someone who had been hurt before and trusted him alone. And with Kenji, she played the role of a hopeless romantic. She rotated them like a performer changing costumes between acts, making sure their paths never crossed. She was methodical in everything. Her calendar was marked with their flight dates, her wardrobe carefully chosen to match the persona she was about to present. Her apartment was cleaned and rearranged to erase traces of the last man before the next one arrived. Every gift had its place, stored and brought out at the right time to make each visitor believe he was the one she cherished. She told each of them that they were her only love. She cried over the same stories with different names, making every man feel like a hero in a tragic romance. When one of them returned home, she would switch phones, adjust her stories, and prepare for the next act. Daniel never saw the late night calls she made to Raphael. Raphael never knew about the early morning messages she sent to Victor. Samuel had no idea she spent weekends with Kenji. Aaron believed she never looked at another man. In reality, Naree lived in a carefully constructed illusion where love wasn't love at all. It was a currency. Each man gave her money, gifts, trips, promises, and most importantly, trust. She had learned that trust was more powerful than anything else. It was what made them blind, what kept them coming back, and what made the game so easy to play. While Daniel dreamt of a wedding, she dreamt of control. She didn't love them. She loved the life they built around her, a life paid for by their devotion. And as long as she kept them believing, her performance continued flawlessly, one man after another, without a single mistake. Daniel's unease began with something small, something so ordinary it almost slipped past his attention. On his 7th trip, as he unpacked his suitcase in the dimly lit bedroom of Naree's apartment, his eyes caught a flash of silver on the nightstand. It was a man's wristwatch, large and clearly not his. At first, he told himself it must belong to a relative or a friend, but the thought sat in the back of his mind like a thorn. When he asked her about it later, she smiled, shrugged it off, and gave him a soft explanation. Her voice carried that same warmth he always trusted, and so he pushed the doubt away, but the thorn remained. The next day, as Daniel stood at the airport waiting for his taxi, he saw something that made that thorn pierce deeper. A man around his age, tall and well-dressed, held a bouquet of white lilies, the exact flowers Naree had once called her favorite. He looked nervous, checking his phone repeatedly. Then Daniel overheard something. The man was talking to someone on the phone, and he said her name, Naree. A chill ran down Daniel's spine. He told himself it must be a coincidence. Bangkok was a big city, but when he followed the man at a distance, his heart stopped. Naree appeared, wearing the same red dress she once said she'd only wear for him. She walked up to the stranger with the same radiant smile she gave Daniel every time he arrived. She wrapped her arms around the man's shoulders, took the flowers, and kissed his cheek like a woman deeply in love. Daniel stood there in the corner of the busy cafe, frozen, unable to make sense of what he was seeing. The image replayed in his head for the rest of the night. Every conversation, every promise, every tear she had shed for him suddenly felt rehearsed. But instead of confronting her immediately, Daniel felt something sharper than anger clarity. For the first time, he began to look at everything without the blindfold of love. He noticed how her phone was always face down on the table, how she sometimes disappeared for hours without explanation, how her stories never matched the details she had shared before. He replayed past trips in his mind like puzzle pieces, finally clicking together. The small inconsistencies he once ignored now painted a clear picture. Over the next few days, Daniel quietly began watching her routine. He noticed her stepping out at night after pretending to be tired, saw her delete messages the moment she received them, and observed the way she avoided direct questions. The lies were no longer invisible. They were everywhere, just waiting for him to see. He didn't want to accept it, but the truth was no longer a whisper in his ear. It was standing right in front of him. She was living 2 lives and maybe more. The woman he had loved so completely had carefully built a world where he was only one of many. His trips, his money, his love, they were all just part of her script. Daniel sat alone in his hotel room that night, staring at the ceiling, realizing that he had been nothing more than another chapter in her performance. The love he had crossed oceans for was a lie, and now that lie had a face, a shape, and a timeline. He wasn't ready to explode in anger. He was ready to uncover everything. Daniel began to move carefully, like someone walking through a house of glass, afraid to make a sound. He knew that if he confronted Naree too early, she'd twist the truth into something soft and believable again. She had done it before with smaller lies, and he had fallen for every one of them. But now he needed more than suspicion. He needed proof, something undeniable. That's when the idea came to him. While she was out one evening, Daniel returned to the apartment with a small hidden camera tucked into his bag. He placed it in a corner of the living room, angled perfectly to capture everything. He didn't tell a soul. For the next 3 weeks, he played the role of a man still in love. He smiled, he listened, he nodded at her excuses. On the surface, nothing changed. But every time he left, the camera watched. It recorded every moment she thought no one could see. The first night she was alone, a man arrived. Daniel recognized him instantly. It was Raphael, the man with the flowers. She welcomed him with the same smile she used on Daniel, touched his face the same way, spoke softly in the same tone. She served him dinner on the plates Daniel had bought her. When Raphael left the next day, another man came 2 nights later. This time it was Victor, the Canadian engineer she had mentioned once as just a friend. Daniel spent hours watching the footage in silence, his heart tightening with each new recording. The routine was so polished it made him sick. Each man walked through the same door, heard the same sweet words, sat on the same couch. She wore different clothes, but used the same gestures, the same lines. It wasn't love, it was performance. Cold, rehearsed, flawless. He dug deeper. He found screenshots of her messages saved on an old laptop she didn't know he had access to. There were 6 men, each with their own promises of marriage, each believing they were the only one. The money transfers, the engagement rings, the handwritten letters, all lined up like evidence in a courtroom. Daniel reached out to Raphael first. The conversation was slow, tense, and careful. Within days, they found Victor online too. One by one, the other men came forward. All of them had the same story, big promises, small lies, and an endless stream of excuses. It was as if they had all been reading from the same script without knowing it. The heartbreak was shared, but so was the anger. Together, they gathered everything: bank records, call logs, flight itineraries, chat screenshots, video clips. The woman they thought they loved was not a victim of circumstance. She was an architect of deception. While Naree went about her days spinning her stories, Daniel and the others quietly built a case strong enough to destroy the illusion she lived in. What once was love had turned into quiet strategy. Daniel no longer saw her as the woman who smiled at the airport. He saw her as a thief wearing a mask of affection, and he was ready to tear that mask off in front of everyone. The day everything collapsed came without warning for Naree, but for Daniel and the others, it was a carefully planned moment. It started at the very place where Daniel had first seen her with another man, the small cafe near the airport. One by one, the men she had deceived arrived, each carrying their own kind of heartbreak and their own folder of proof. Raphael walked in first, his expression cold and steady. Victor came next, quiet but tense. Aaron, Samuel, and Kenji followed, their faces marked by the weight of betrayal. Last came Daniel, not as the man who once adored her, but as the man determined to end the lie. Naree arrived, expecting to meet Raphael that afternoon. She wore the same carefully chosen dress she always wore when she wanted to appear soft and innocent. But the moment she saw all of them sitting together, the mask she had worn for years began to crack. For the first time, she wasn't in control of the scene. 6 pairs of eyes stared at her, no longer filled with love, but with cold, sharp truth. She tried to speak, tried to explain, but every sentence was cut down by evidence. Raphael placed photos of their time together on the table. Victor showed her screenshots of their wedding plans. Samuel brought receipts of the money he sent her over 2 years. Kenji had printed their messages, each line filled with the same words she had used with the others. Aaron laid down copies of the engagement ring order, and Daniel, who had once loved her most blindly, placed a small flash drive in the center of the table. Inside was the footage from her apartment, every visit, every lie, every moment she believed no one was watching. Her practiced smile faded, her hands trembled. The same woman who once moved between lives so effortlessly suddenly looked small and cornered. There were no sweet words strong enough to untangle this trap. For the first time, her performance failed. Raphael contacted the local authorities while Daniel handed over the evidence. What followed was fast. Investigators uncovered not just these 6 men, but others from past years. The pattern was clear: false promises, multiple engagements, financial deception, and manipulation of emotions. She wasn't just a woman with secrets. She was a fraud who had built her entire life on lies. When they arrested her at the airport 2 days later, she was holding a plane ticket to meet another man in Australia. She didn't fight, she didn't cry. She just stared straight ahead as if she already knew this day would come. Daniel watched from a distance as officers led her away in handcuffs. There was no sense of victory, only a heavy silence that followed him back home. He had loved her with everything he had, and she had turned that love into a weapon. When he boarded the plane back to London, it felt different this time. The thrill, the excitement, the blind hope, it was gone. All that remained was a quiet understanding of how easily love can be twisted into something dangerous when trust is placed in the wrong hands. The story of Naree Somchai became more than a heartbreak. It became a warning whispered in quiet conversations, a reminder that not every smile is honest, not every promise is real, and sometimes the person you'd cross oceans for is the very one who built the storm waiting for you on the other side. Daniel carried that truth home like an invisible scar, not out of shame, but as a lesson he would never forget.